I am here with Vic again, and we have an announcement to make. Vic,
Hello.
go ahead and tell our audience that what is the plan for Tuesdays, except the happy hours at the bar in the neighborhood.
Yes, we are. You and I are developing Tuesday nights with Vic, I believe.
Yes.
Tuesdays with Vic. Yeah, my group thinks that's really cool, and they've been enjoying the podcasts and everything.
Good.
So
And we're going to discuss different topics. Vic hopefully will be able to read from the Human Extinction book for us and discuss some of those subjects. I look forward to every Tuesday, Vic.
Oh, me too. Me too.
Yeah,
and I try to gather up my information to get as much as possible to the listening audience and to you. So that's always on my mind.
Awesome. Okay. So I think you have a few things that you want to get out of our way before we get to the subject of this week.
Yeah, let's get some things clarified. I mean, it's not really too bad. It's just things that I have made mistakes on. So,
Sure.
and I know my group's going to be listening to this one as podcast 3.0. And if there's anything that I screw up on this one, they'll send me emails and say, "Oh, you forgot about this or you forgot about that." So that works out for me pretty well.
Okay.
But the first one here is I wanted to clarify when I was talking about Chris's last two books. In our first podcast, I was so nervous, that are for sale. I mentioned the Anunnaki plan or the Human Plan, which is his next to his last book. And then his last book is Synthesis. And as I was chatting on, I was like, Synthesis Plan, and that is not the name of the book. So I was a little embarrassed when I heard that. So yeah, it's Anunnaki Plan or Human Plan and Synthesis. Those are his last two books. Those books are still for sale. Which leads me to something else. With all of the books that I've got of his and with Chris's permission to read whatever I see fit, I am going to make it a point not to read from his last two books simply because if there is anyone that wants to know what's inside of those books, they still have them for sale.
Okay, that makes sense. That's
so
fair.
I would rather not take that information away from him and just read it aloud when he's still got it for sale. And anybody can go to my site and follow the instructions and get either one of those books.
Are they going to ship these books from his location, or you will ship those books?
No, they would come directly from him and his wife.
Okay.
And they're in Wales, and I've got the instructions for both books if they want to get those. Okay, the second thing is I talked of the 13 races in the universe, and I neglected to follow that up that there are other souls, because as I was listening to myself, I was like, it sounded like there are only 13 races in the universe except for Mother Earth being her own soul, and that's not entirely true. I mean, I did go through some steps to say that all of the planets were souls of themselves, the sun were souls, but there's also the center of our galaxy is a soul, and soul and consciousness, if you say soul and or consciousness, they're pretty much interchangeable. Many solar systems themselves are souls. We are unique with all the planets being individual souls and the sun being an individual soul. But a lot of systems out there, there's one soul that runs their entire solar system. So that's a pretty big soul, like what I told you about Valus, the one that took over Adam Weishaupt. He was a solar system-sized soul. And then there are 13, this is another key piece of information. There are 13 beings that make up the universal envelope. Our universe is shaped like a football or a rugby ball. So there are 13 very large beings. They are individual souls, but they work together as a group and they maintain the integrity of our universe. So that was something that I left out whenever I was talking about that. So I just wanted to say the 13 races that I mentioned are not the only life in the universe.
I see. Yeah.
Okay. The third one is when I was mentioning the Velon leaving their solar system, I incorrectly said they were leaving the universe. No, they're part of our universe. They have since been moved to a solar system that is outside of our universe, that is adjacent or connected to our universe. But when I was talking about them leaving their solar system and coming to our solar system, I said they left their universe, so that was incorrect. I wanted to clear that up.
Okay.
The fourth one is when I was talking about Roswell, I said, Chris told me, and I went on chattering on about Roswell. Chris has never told me anything other than email exchanges via my global group. So I have, as I've stated before, I've never spoken directly to Chris. We've never met face to face. We've never directly exchanged emails. My emails go through my global group. So that was incorrect. I was chattering on. I was nervous. I was talking about Roswell. I was excited. And I said, Chris told me. No, he didn't. I wanted to clear that up.
I appreciate you being so diligent and so accurate about all these things. Thank you.
This man has granted me the ability to read his material. And I do not take that lightly in the slightest, because this is his work. This is his energy coming through his knowledge, the energy following through his arm, through his hand, through the pen, into the paper. It carries a signature. I cannot do anything that would negate his information in any way. So if I make mistakes, I expect my group to call me on it. I would expect Chris Thomas to call me on it. And if I catch it listening to myself, I'm going to call myself on it and let you know immediately. So that's where we are with that.
Thank you.
The fifth one, the last one, is I stated that Earth raised her frequency in March of 2000. I kind of got that messed up. It's actually May of 2000 when she raised her frequency. It was 7.65 hertz originally, and then she raised it, but I got that totally wrong. And as I stated to the email to you, I said, but in my defense, they both start with M. Yeah. But it was May, not March.
Okay. 2 months, not a big deal. Okay. So it was 7.6 gigahertz?
Yeah. Originally, her original frequency, a lot of people refer to it as the Schumann resonance, but her original frequency was 7.65 hertz.
Hertz. Wow.
That was her cycle. That was her frequency cycle, 7.65 hertz. That right there was what it was that we discovered the problem was, and why we put ourselves into the 7,000-year plan to start with, is because we were trying to figure out why we kept losing our higher brain functions, our abilities, our telepathy, our ability to translocate and bilocate and all these other things. And we finally got our answer. And when we got the answer, she started raising her frequency, and she's had to do it like stair steps, because so many of us have been asleep for so long that if she had gone from 7.65 all the way up to 3,500 like overnight, it would have killed a lot of people.
It completely makes sense. And I'm sure you felt it. Many other people felt it. And I don't know what was the requirement to feel this thing, but I know that I can feel it. Something has changed.
Well, the thing about the year 2000, though, is the Y2K thing. Everybody was freaking out. I mean, all the computers are going to crash. They're all going to die. The computers won't be able to reset.
Remember. Yeah.
Everybody was freaking out. So any frequency rise that Mother Earth would have attempted to do in 2000, unless you were particularly sensitive, had psychic abilities, you may not have even noticed it. I know I didn't. I didn't happen to notice anything myself personally as far as any energy frequency rising. Of course, now my group will probably tell me that it may have something to do with the Earth raising the frequency very slowly instead of just, jacking us all up to 35.
That's what I was going to say.
Everybody freaking out. Yeah. So that may have been it. But I know that if there were those that knew that the frequency could feel the frequency going up around 2000, the majority of us wouldn't have paid any attention to it because everybody was freaking out over Y2K and the computers.
Exactly. Yeah, there was a huge distraction then.
Mm-hmm. But Is it still with the new frequency, or has it changed? Do we know? Have we gotten all the way up to 3,500? I really don't know. I honestly do not know. I know we were headed in that direction. I've got a couple of global members, maybe 3 of them, that are dowsers. They might try to douse and see what the frequency is now, but I'm not entirely sure. I'd have to follow up with them to find out about that if they knew. Oh yeah, in our discussion in our last email, I had one member that corrected me on something in the second podcast that says it's Gaia that Earth does not like. That's the name that Earth doesn't like, and that you were asking me about how the aliens talk to her, or how some of the people here on the planet talk to her, and his response was Earth uses telepathy to make her wishes known and barring the Velon. So the aliens, they just talk to her. I mean, it's a telepathic communication
with Earth.
Yes, in fact, Chris had a telepathic communication with her. I mean, he could talk to her as well.
I confess, I never imagined or heard or studied anything about Earth in that respect, that it communicates with you through telepathy or any other methods. But as soon as you mention that, we all talk about, yes, Earth is alive. So if it's alive, it communicates. It communicates with those that live on it. And it hit me really hard. It was a wake-up call for me that, yes, we have to listen to Earth, Mother Earth. And here's a little, if you don't mind, I'm going to digress, tell you a story. You heard of Sinbad, right?
Yeah.
So in one of his journeys, probably you know the story, in one of his journeys, they are drifted in the seas, and for months and months, they don't see any land. And finally, they see a land. They're excited. They get off their ships. They go to this land. They say, oh, there's trees and everything else. And they start a fire. And after a while, the earth starts shaking and moving. And they realize that, oh, my God, we are on the back of this humongous whale or sea creature, whatever it is. So that story came to my mind after we talked about Earth. And I said, that is us. We are on the back of this creature. It's alive. And we're living with this creature. We have to understand and respect it. Otherwise, we all will be drowned.
It's a symbiotic relationship with her.
It is a symbiotic relationship. Yeah.
She loves having us here. And we've been here on the planet for so very long a time that we have some symbiotic relationships like with our pets. People talk to their plants.
Yeah.
And there are some people that are highly psychic that have the ability to see the fairy or see the she, although some of most of them have backed off just waiting for humanity to finally wake up. But there are some that can still see them. Yes,
I agree. I come from a culture that people strongly believe in these things, especially in the language they call it Peri, which is fairy, P instead of F. And also jinn. There is a lot of jinn. Jinn, the creature that comes from very well known and believed in Middle East, and people, they communicate with them all the time, and nobody laughs at them. That's the kicker. When you talk about it, nobody laughs at you.
My group has had some discussions over the years about the jinn.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're not entirely sure exactly what they are, but we know they exist.
Yeah, in Middle East, in the culture in Middle East, and especially among Muslims, they say God created man from the dirt and he created jinn from the fire. So they are made from fire. And these are just folklore, right? People when talk about them and they see them at night. And there's a lot of stories.
Is folklore and Avalon and things like that. And you get into King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table and the real story about that's going to be another conversation too.
So you see, I have to read this quote to you. It's from Michael Tessarian. We were talking about him before this interview. It says, perhaps the greatest myth being purveyed is that myths are just myths. That's very true. Mm-hmm. They're not just myths.
They came from somewhere.
Exactly. People of the past, ancient people, they were not stupid to see a shadow at night and think that, oh, this is a creature. No, they lived in that amount of light they recognized, and so on and so forth. Okay. Did you cover everything you wanted to cover?
The last thing that I put into the email there, I said, was regarding Atlantis. My global group member said it's not just the Azores, because I was thinking it just stopped at the Azores, and that was it. I had forgotten about this part. He said, but also England and Ireland are remnants of Atlantis. And I found that in one of the books. I was sitting on my couch earlier this evening and digging through all of my books looking for the Atlantis material, and I stumbled across that very quote that he pulled out of that book, and it's Chris's first book, and it says, the remaining two outcrops of Atlantis, Britain and Ireland, have always been at the forefront of human development and planetary consciousness. And I have actually found that in the book to read over, because Chris does go forward and say that he's not being Britain is the best place in the world, and because I live here, this is a major energy intake of the planet.
Okay.
So I think that pretty much covers everything. Like I said, my global group will catch me on things that I might screw up.
No. You have done a great job so far, and I'm sure it will be fantastic. And on that note, in our discussions back and forth in the emails, you wanted to discuss Atlantis. Yes.
It is a very, very large topic, and there are pieces of it in 6 books that I'm looking at right now. And I can read from the books. I can give you the bits and pieces that are in the books if you would like.
Let's first give us a 30,000 feet overview, or just a bird view of, okay, when did Atlantis started? How did it get into the culture almost everywhere on the planet? And give us some information that Chris believes that is true, and let's get into this discussion, and let's see where it leads us.
You were talking about when Atlantis started?
When we started, knowing about Atlantis. Who told us there was an Atlantis? It seems like officially Plato wrote about Atlantis. Nobody knew about it before. Is that true? Wasn't it true? How we know there was an Atlantis?
There are ancient texts that mention it.
Okay.
A lot has been lost just to human movement and possibly outright destruction of documents of its existence. It seems to be in the human collective that we have a memory of it, because most of us were there. There are some people that Chris encountered that had bad memories about Atlantis, because there were some pretty ugly things that took place on Atlantis. So it's in the collective memory. It's stronger in some people than others, but we've kind of always known that it was there. And there have been texts. There have been people that have mentioned that have been texts. If Plato wrote about it, that's something that I honestly don't remember. I'm kind of embarrassed to say that. But as far as when it,
if we base everything on the birth of Christ 2022 years ago, when did Atlantis exist based on before Christ?
It says 85,000 years ago Atlantis was established. So 85,000 years ago from when he was writing this, I guess it would have been in 2010 or 2011, 85,000 years ago. And then 65,000 years ago, Atlantis was destroyed. So
so there was a 20,000 years of existence of Atlantis.
Yes.
20,000 years. Okay.
20,000 years. Yeah.
And our civilization, based on accepted archaeology, is what, 12,000?
Entirely sure of. I would have. I know
basically they go against. You hear always they said no, the world was not created 6,000 years ago, which comes from the Bible, right? The
6,000 years.
5, almost 6,000 years, 5,781 or 82, whatever the Jewish calendar says. So we
Yeah.
believe that that's when the world, God created the world and life on it. My point is, if Atlantis existed for 20,000 years, where are we in our advancements after 10,000 years of civilization? Is this something that we can compare, or Atlantis was completely different?
We were completely different.
Good point.
We are still very subhuman in comparison to how we were on Atlantis. Of course, as I stated before, I think in one of the other two podcasts, we had no sex. When we came down to the planet, we covered ourselves in the earth. There were no children. We had all of our abilities intact. But even then, we knew that there was an issue as far as losing telepathic abilities and things like that. We knew something was wrong. I mean, we knew something was wrong. We just didn't know what it was back then. And then, of course, once the bacteria got loose, we pretty much stopped paying attention to that and were concerned with the bacteria and then had to sink it. And then there was also the other issue of outrageous experimentation that was taking place
in Atlantis.
Yeah. There were some really outrageous things that were taking place because we were just seeing what we could do with human bodies. And there was a lot of really, really ugly things that took place, and that's where some of the people have the bad memories if they do. If they're psychic, they would remember them. If they go through hypnosis, they may have memories of it, and some of it is not. Some of it's really, really bad. It's really bad.
So Atlantis existed established 85,000 years ago, and how do we know what we know about Atlantis? And also, you mentioned it's possibly, or very likely, according to what Chris says, where we have today UK and Ireland, or rather England and Ireland. So, but almost we know what was the area for that. How do we know what we know about Atlantis? Books, or how we got access to this information?
Well, like I said before, collective consciousness puts it into our memories as far as DNA, since most of us were there. The junk DNA that the scientists talk about in our bodies are actually, that's past life memory. We're supposed to have 13 strands of DNA. I've read reports of some of them rolling out of the UK where there have been some children that have been born in the UK that had 3 or 4 strands of DNA. We have the ability to reconstruct our DNA, but we're going to have a little bit more soul energy in our bodies in order to reconstruct all of that. There's so much that has to take place before that happens.
So the fall of Atlantis was followed by the fall of humanity, as I'm hearing from you.
We
in a
left
way,
the planet.
right?
Most of us left the planet, and we were gone for quite a while because there was so much damage. And that gets us back to another thing that we were talking about with the destruction of Atlantis, because I said that she was rocked on her equatorial axis, and I was wrong about that.
Yes.
She was rocked on her polar axis. That's where she got her tilt from. The equatorial rocking that she took, that was when the dinosaurs were destroyed.
Okay.
I was reading about that earlier, so that's another correction too. But we have a collective memory of Atlantis in our DNA because we were all there. Some of us remember, some of us don't. At least in this lifetime, I've always heard about Atlantis. Everybody's been talking about it one way or another. Most of it is speculation, simply because of the fact that we had to sink Atlantis almost completely, except for the outcroppings that are left with the Azores and Britain and Ireland. We had to, and there's really nothing left. I mean, even if you could get a camera or a submersible down into the Atlantic Trench, you're not going to see anything. It's not like there are pieces of Atlantis or structures or whatever that are left on the ocean floor. They're just not there. So it's left to speculation, besides what Plato wrote or any other ancient documents that came out that mentioned Atlantis. I remember years ago them talking about they were thinking that parts of Atlantis were in the Mediterranean Sea, and that the Mediterranean Sea didn't exist until Atlantis had been there and it was sank, and that's
Good
where the
point.
water came in.
Good point.
I read some strange things about that, but it's pure speculation. What Chris Thomas provides is what's written in the Akashic, and I would trust what he tells what's in the Akashic than I would anybody else.
Yes.
Like I said, and I'm going to have to get a hold of that book that you sent me of Michael Tsarian's, because I have heard of him, and I'm interested in looking at that. I'm sorry that I missed that, but
no worries. Very much along the same lines that Chris talks. Michael also talks about two subjects, which is Atlanteans, Atlantis, and aliens, and effect of that on human life and human advancement and where we are today. That's what he basically discusses in his book.
Should be an interesting read. I know Chris has said in his books that it was paradise on earth when it was the best of times when we got there. So it was a paradise until it spun completely out of control and then turned into a nightmare.
Wow. So was Atlantis, based on what we know, the only, by today's terms, country on Earth, or people lived in different areas and Atlantis was ruling over them? Was Atlantis something like the United States of 21st century compared to all other countries? What was the status of Atlantis? Do we know anything?
It was just a continent that we did a lot of experimentation on.
A continent.
It didn't rule over anybody. It was just, we were coming to the planet. We were, in physical form and experimenting. I've read some things about that where they said that Atlantis was brutal and it was going after people and trying to rule over the planet. No, it was just a continent for experimentation, and like Chris said, it was paradise on earth at the time.
Okay. And it was a continent. That's important to remember, that it was a continent. And 85,000 years ago, I'm not good at geology, but I don't know were the continents at the same places that they are today, or they were just disjointed or in different forms. And obviously, because we sank Atlantis, we must have affected some other changes in terms of how the continents are today.
There was a lot of destruction, but there's pictures several pictures in the books of where Atlantis was, and it was very large. South America at one time was not connected to Central America. It was moved more to the left. And there's also something in one of the books too about, there are some people out there that have mentioned that there was one continent on the planet and it all broke apart. Something about Panacea,
plate tectonic,
Pangea, Panacea, something like that.
Yeah.
No, that's not even that's not even in the Akashic. There's no such thing. He clearly states in the books that most of the continents where they are now is where they always have been, with the exception of Atlantis being in the Atlantic Ocean and then having to be sunk, and then South America being somewhat to the left of Central America and not attached.
Okay.
And also that very same picture too, I was looking up where Lemuria was, and Lemuria was attached to the tail end of South America when it was in existence. So it was attached to it. I was thinking it was attached to Antarctica, but no. When I looked at the picture again, it was attached to the very tail end on the right-hand side of South America.
South America, where today is, what do we have there? Chile is there?
Chile is the long country that's on the left-hand side of it that goes all the way down to the coldest part, close to Antarctica. I don't know about where all of the other ones are. I know Colombia is at the very top and to the left.
That's the end of South America. Chile is at the end of South America.
The very tail end of South America has got a little hook to it, and Chile runs along the western border. It's a long, skinny country, and it goes all the way down to the Antarctica area.
That's right. Yes.
But
yes.
Lemuria was attached. Lemuria was attached to the other side of it, where the hook is down at the bottom. It was attached there at the bottom when it existed.
Oh yes. I'm looking at the map, and it makes sense. And if you look at the world map between Europe and United States, North Atlantic Ocean, that's where Atlantis was, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
This is fascinating because you could see that. And also in some texts, they call it High Brazil as well, and many different names, right?
I've never heard that term before, High Brazil.
High Brazil. I have a list of names. It has been called Antela, Amenti, Arul, Atala, Agartha, Shangri-La. You probably have heard of Shangri-La. And Hyperborea, Tula, and then High Brazil, among many other names that they call it in different cultures. So the point is,
the names for Atlantis?
The name for Atlantis, yeah. Every culture, like you said, we know in our collective memory that there was a land. And every culture knows that with a different name, many different names. And what I mentioned are names in different cultures.
I've heard a few of those names. The Amenti sounds familiar. Hyperborea sounds familiar.
Yeah.
And there was a third one that you mentioned that I'd heard before.
Shangri-La.
Shangri-La, I've heard that before.
Tula.
I always thought Shangri-La. Yeah. I always thought Shangri-La was more tied to
East and Orient and Tibet.
Yeah, I'm thinking. I can't. The Lost Horizon, the old movie Lost Horizon.
Exactly.
That's
yes.
Xanadu.
This is so amazing you mentioned that, because I watched it a few days ago.
Oh, Lost Horizon? I haven't seen that movie in years.
I watched the original one from, 1940, I believe, not the 70s, with Michael York, the older one. And yeah, they went to that lost city of Shangri-La. They call it Lost City of Shangri-La. Basically, they say all these names are pointing to the same place, which was Atlantis for humanity. So what do we know about Atlantis? They had an advanced science there. Was it all science, similar to the science we see today? Or they were more in tune with Earth, the nature? And what kind of achievement are we talking about when we say there was an advanced civilization in Atlantis?
There was a lot of, like I said, there was a lot of experimentation with body types. I told you about the bacteria that had been worked on that was slated to go to another planet. Some of it was just enjoying being physical. It was just the existence of being physical. Because most of the ones, there were semi-physical races here, but most of us were the non-physical races, and we were just here to enjoy and experiment and be physical. It was just a joy to be here.
Yes, experiencing life in a human body. Yes.
As far as the stories that I've heard about fancy structures and advanced culture, and there's too much of modern society that has been overlapped.
Yeah, pop culture probably. Yes.
Yeah, way too much pop culture, way too much of modern what modern man's idea of what Atlantis should be. and it's not even close. And there's a lot of a breakdown in these 7 books, because he's got bits and pieces and descriptions of Atlantis that they're in pieces. He doesn't do a book on Atlantis. He's got Atlantis woven into the other information in all of his books. So when I read to you, I'm going to have to piecemeal it, because there's some in this book and there's some in that book and there's some in this book. Because the thing about Chris's books is that they are a journey. They are not only a journey of information for anybody that he shares them with, but they were his journey. Because you can tell by reading his very first book and reading his very last book, and then on to his essays and his blog posts and things like that, he goes through this journey of digging this information out of the Akashic, and you see the information grow and extend, and you get a bigger picture, and it's a giant puzzle piece. All the books are a giant puzzle piece. You cannot read one of his books and get the entire idea of what he's trying to give to you. Yeah. You have to read all of them. And it's really sad that 9 of them are permanently out of print, which is why I'm here. I can read to you. Yes.
We have to make sure to preserve this knowledge by having you on this and talking about these things. So do you have something to read for us?
I am right now in chapter 1 of his very first book, the book that's called The Journey Home. This was printed in 1998. This was his very, very first book. And this was his first attempt to put pen to paper with information that he was gleaning from the Akashic. So in chapter 1, it's called The Recent Past. And there is a section heading down at the bottom that says the heart chakra. The planet has always functioned in much the same way as the human body. It is composed of and is maintained by the free flow of energy through its chakras and meridians, just like human beings.
Yeah.
The existing chakras and meridians, or ley lines, have served their purpose well during the whole period of human and planetary history between Atlantis and the present. However, to accommodate mankind's transition, a new, more powerful system is required. The existing ley line and chakra system was put into place in the early days of the Atlantis period and was modified at the end of Atlantis to accommodate the sinking of that continent. The effects of the grid has varied over the intervening centuries as man's consciousness has ebbed and flowed to the dictates of world events and humanity's needs. The draw on this freely available energy has reduced as mankind's levels of consciousness reduced and minimized their interaction with the planetary consciousness. The 7 global chakras provided energy frequencies that reflected the energy requirements of the physical body until such time that mankind was ready to change. However, in order to reflect humanity's current change of consciousness, a new ley line grid and new chakra centers are required. The new chakras were put into place a little over 20,000 years ago when recent human history began. However, they were not activated at that time as human chakras were not able to accommodate the higher frequency levels. As our 20,000-year plan is nearing its completion and human consciousness is changing, a new energy is needed to help the transition process. Approximately 50 years ago, a new ley line grid system was begun which overlaid and interacted with the existing ley line grid and connected the soon-to-be activated chakras. This work was carried out by a small number of humans and would currently be described as angel helpers. Angel helpers, what he's referring to there is the small number of humans were probably out of human form and in their normal non-human form.
Uh-huh.
The new grid was very carefully constructed to interact with the old grid to provide a new energy source for both the planetary consciousness and for people. The remaining 2 outcrops of Atlantis, Britain and Ireland, have always been at the forefront of human development and planetary consciousness. There's the quote from my global member. Given this history and connection, the new grid and heart chakra is centered on Britain. This is not jingoism, nor any attempt at reestablishing Britain's global influence, but a quietly stated fact of the history of human consciousness. The inhabitants of Great Britain are no more, and no less than a part of humanity's whole, and have chosen their land of residence as a higher consciousness decision to be part of humanity's current change. This goes into the 13 global chakras, Avalon. That pretty much covers the first touching on it.
Is Avalon the same as Atlantis?
No.
It's not.
Avalon. No,
Avalon comes in the legend of King Arthur, no?
About Avalon. To many, the realms of Avalon have belonged in the if-only category and forms a part of a distant memory that cannot quite be taken hold of. The realms of Avalon were removed to a place of safekeeping over 900 years ago as man's destiny changed and Christianity's influence began to overlay the ways of the land. Avalon's influence was removed with extreme reluctance, and I have to follow this up. The reason that the Avalon was removed, Avalon was shut. The bridge to Avalon was shut off by Merlin for reasons that we'll get into at a later time. But it was shut down 9 years ago as man's destiny changed and Christianity's influence began to overlay the ways of the land. Avalon's influence was removed with extreme reluctance. Humanity was beginning to enter a new phase of experience and experimentation, and if the energies and peoples of Avalon remained as part of the changing human consciousness, their love and energy would have been abused and eventually destroyed. By taking Avalon out of human grasp and altering perceptions, they could be saved until such time as man was once again ready to accept the lives of the little people as a safe reality. Human awareness and levels of consciousness have altered so dramatically over the last 30 years that it has been possible to consider bringing Avalon back into the physical dimensions. They've probably backed away after all of this mess that's going on now.
Oh, yes.
Anyway, the little people that remained within human spheres have always worked with the planetary consciousness, maintaining our world as close to a physical paradise as human activities would allow. However, they have tended to hide themselves away as they have a deep-seated and justifiable mistrust of human motives and human activities. Despite this mistrust, they have continued their work with great love and humor and have taken great delight in interacting with people who have been aware of their presence. Due to the work of a growing number of people, of acceptance and working with the little people, it was felt that it was possible to begin forging stronger links between people and the fairy folk. In order for these links to develop and strengthen, the influence and energies of Avalon needed to be reconnected directly with the human physical dimensions. On August 16th, 1996, the first bridge between the two worlds was made. This bridge is not permanent. Trust needs to be redeveloped before Avalon accepts its true role in planetary and human affairs. Nevertheless, the link has been forged, and Avalon's influence is amongst us once more, and the magic that is Avalon can once again enhance all of human activity. It is now up to all of humanity to show Avalon that its trust is warranted before a permanent link can be established. They're basically talking about the world that housed the fairy, the she, unicorns, dragons, and everything in myth legend.
Yes.
So,
well, that's Avalon.
That's Avalon. Avalon is the world of the fairy folk and everything that comes along with it.
Yes, it seems to be a land like that, and it's not the same as Atlantis. It's definitely different. But you said a few things that I'm gonna ask you, if you don't mind. So you said,
go ahead.
Meridian and ley lines.
What they are?
Yeah.
They're grid lines across the planet. There are grid lines all the way across the planet that feed energy. They're energy lines. They're all over the planet. Where exactly, I know it's a grid pattern across the planet. And then, of course, the heart chakra is the one that's up in Britain. Okay, here we have...
and where are the other chakras? You said 7 global chakras. Do we know where they're located at?
That's what I was getting. That's what I was getting
good.
to.
Okay.
I'm scanning it right now. August 14th, 1996. That's the same day that the bridge was reconnected to Avalon, and it says in a remote valley in North Devon. I guess it's in the UK. The final connection to the new heart chakra was made, and the new ley line grid activated. So there was an activation of energy in 1996 in anticipation of us finishing our human plan by 12/21/12, and we were getting extra energy to help us along.
Oh, with our plan.
Mm-hmm. A great deal of preparation work was carried out by a small group of people over a long period of time in order that this connection could be made. Most of the people involved in this work were unaware of the final purpose of their efforts, but all had an overwhelming sense that their work must be done, and is a clear indication that each individual, whether working alone or collectively, can make a very real contribution and a very real difference. The exact location of the chakra is unimportant, talking about the one up in Britain, but the energy contained within it is of far greater strength of range of frequencies than has been available at any time during mankind's history. All people can draw upon this energy either for themselves or for their work with the planetary cleansing. For the technically interested, the frequency range is from 8 hertz to 53 with 3, 6, 9, 12. With 12 zeros after it. 53 trillion gazillion hertz is truly a limitless source. The switching on of the heart chakra and the term heart is used in the sense that it is the primary energy source that pumps and feeds energy into the new grid and chakra system, and does not correlate to the human heart chakra. Had 2 effects at the time of activation. Firstly, the switching on of the new grid and the other 12 global chakras and the 39 lesser chakras, and secondly, to emit a low-frequency pulse of energy that reactivated some of the so-called junk DNA contained within the human body cells. In fact, when this connection was made and all of this energy was sent in, it sent a pulse to every human on the planet that basically said, wakey, wakey.
Yes. I love this conversation because it makes sense to me. It does make sense.
And yes. it goes on to say the DNA is the primary human memory system, and reactivating this section of the DNA brought about the beginning of mankind's final reawakening. Like I said, wakey, wakey. The 13 global chakras are located as listed below. They are not given in any particular order, nor do they relate to human chakras, but are major energy centers on the new global grid. Devon being the first one in Great Britain. Constantine, Algeria. I guess it's pronounced Juan, Central African Republic.
Okay.
Calvaria in South Africa. Kanpur, India. Perun, Russia. Ust-Nera in Russia. Tainan in China. Ketapang in Borneo. Quilpie? I'm not sure how that's pronounced. Quilpie is in Australia. Kamloops, Canada. Leon, Mexico. And Lake Titicaca in Peru. Titicaca, I'm pronouncing it wrong, in Peru is also going to come up in future discussions about that being an energy center and how it's been used. That's going to come up in future discussions.
Yeah, it comes up in so many conversations like this. So that was 13 global chakras. Okay, 13. How are they located on the planet? If we look at the planet, look at the world map, are they all along the same line or distributed? Have you ever looked at it on the map where you can place them?
Well, Chris has never provided a map of where the global chakra centers are. He only provided a map of Avalon. I've never actually gotten a world map.
We can just put those. Yeah, we can put just pins on the map and see. And so there is nothing in North America.
No.
What does that mean? What's the meaning of? Okay,
well, yeah, in North America, there's one in Kamloops. There's one in Canada. I mean, there is North America.
Oh, yes. You mentioned that there is one in Canada. So what does that mean? What's the significance of a place where one of these chakras is located there?
They're energy intake centers. It's chakras for Mother Earth, like the human body has chakras. It's energy centers.
And people who reside in these areas feeling something different, or I guess what I'm trying to understand is what's the difference between areas that are not these on these chakras, and what's the difference between it just the level of energy, frequency? What's the difference?
I know that they're just major energy centers.
Yeah.
Just judging by what Chris's material says.
I was just curious.
I don't.
Yeah, I understand. It ends up being, what's the difference between your hand and your head, something like that. Hey, they have different applications. You use them for different things. But I was wondering whether living in areas like that has benefits for people live there. They have better consciousness. They are more conscious than the rest of us.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
That, and you're going to find this in every country on the planet, that there are First Nation peoples. And probably the First Nation peoples are going to be close to these energy centers because they understand what they are and what they can do for humanity. It's energy for the planet, energy for us. Our chakras connect into Mother Earth. We have chakras. It's all about energy. The basis of life is energy.
Of course. And it's not just energy for us to drive our cars or, power or electricity or anything like that. This energy has other applications, correct?
Well, if you make a comparison to electricity or driving cars, which is combustion engines and stuff like that has no comparison whatsoever.
Okay.
The energy, these energy centers on Mother Earth, they're part of her. I mean, they're her energy centers, and she's a very powerful soul. And then we have our own energy centers in our bodies.
And what's the connection here with ley lines, meridians, chakras, and Atlantis? What was Atlantis before its destruction in terms of chakras? Mm-hmm.
I don't recall running across anything about Atlantis having a chakra on it.
Okay.
I'd have to dig deeper into the books about that one. I don't recall with my global group members listening to this, if any of them know there was a chakra system. It states here that the existing ley line and chakra system was put into place in the early days of the Atlantis period.
Oh, yes, you're right. I missed that.
I don't know that there was an actual chakra on Atlantis. I don't recall reading that. Of course, one of my global members can probably find that or correct me on that one. But the 7 global chakra centers that you're talking about, that was the original grid line that was laid during the Atlantis period. Because you were asking me about the 7 global chakras. That was during Atlantis. The 13 was during 1996. As far as it says in a remote valley of North Devon, the final connection to the new heart chakra was made and a new ley line grid activated. A great deal of preparation work was carried out by a small group of people over a long period of time in order for this connection that could be made. Most of the people involved in the work were unaware of the final purpose of their efforts, but they all had an overwhelming sense that the work must be done. It is in a clear indication for each individual, whether working alone or collectively, can make a very real contribution and a real difference. So it was a group of people back in 1996 that were making preparations for it, and small group of people may not have been totally aware of what the final purpose of their work was.
Exactly.
It's just they knew they had to do something.
Mm-hmm. So the memory of Atlantis, we all collectively have that memory. And we know that Atlantis existed. There are mentions of Atlantis in different old books and records of the past. We know Plato for sure wrote something about it, and we know where the United Kingdom is today, and Ireland is part of the remnants of that continent. That's what we know about Atlantis. And then we know that it sank by people, its own people, because of the virus or the microbe they had there. And that was the result of their experiments on humans, on bodies, and perhaps by today's standards, unethical stuff was going on, or what was going on?
The bacteria that got loose really didn't have anything to do with the experimentation. That was a completely different issue. The experimentation that was taking place, that was working on body types, and there were those that were working with animals, and they wanted to show that they were working with a particular animal, and so they would do something to change their skin to look like the animals they were working with. And what the problem turned out to be, it was mixing human and animal genes turned some of the people in Atlantis into predators. So that was a bad thing. But as far as the bacteria got loose, that was something else. That was some people that were working on the bacteria, getting ready to prepare it for another planet, and it got loose, and they didn't realize it got loose, and that's a separate issue from the experimentation.
But that's what triggered the destruction of Atlantis.
Yes, the bacteria got loose. Yeah. That was when I told you about how it could destroy the human body.
Yes. So it's coming together. I want to tell our listeners that you and I, we have to go back and forth. Look at this. You look at the resources you have. You look at the books. I ask you questions from my resources. We discuss this at the end. We want to come to some kind of conclusion. And also what I like to do is connect it to today's world that we live. Are elements from Atlantis, those who did human experiments on human body, mixing humans with other animals or whatever they did, I feel like we see some of those things happening today. I feel like this obsession with human body, improving human body. Now they're talking about fusing our physical identity with digital identity, with biological identity, all these things that comes out. Do you see a correlation? Do you see we're repeating what we did in Atlantis today? Are there a race of Atlanteans that are living today?
Well, my global group has been discussing this at great length for quite a while. I think there's two angles to this.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first angle is we are working out the memories of Atlantis and the things that took place there. I think that's one angle. We have the memories of it, even if it's not conscious to us in our day-to-day lives, because day-to-day minutia can pretty much ruin everything. The second angle, I think, has to do with the Velon influence.
Yes, they are the wild card, aren't they?
Well, this transhumanism thing, some of it is born out of some of the crazy channelings that the Velon have done to the psychics and the mediums, telling them that we're going to rise to the fifth dimension, and in order to evolve to the fifth dimension, we have to be taken off the planet, and all manner of just absolute crazy crap going through channels. And apparently there's a whole lot of mediums out there and a whole lot of channel workers that don't stop and think about the garbage that they're being fed. But anyway, the Velon desperately wanted us to believe in the fantasy story that they created and deposited in our 5,000-year past.
Mm-hmm.
And when we didn't, then they had to think about something else. Even though the vernacular is out there, like with the Ancient Aliens nonsense on History Channel. As far as what's going on with what they're trying to do to human bodies, particularly with these vaccines, and what they're finding in the vaccines with the graphene oxide.
Oh God, yes.
And they have found like Hydra-like creatures inside of the vaccine.
Yeah, micro rollers and creatures, yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's why I say that this issue that's going on as far as the human body and the transhumanist nonsense is a two-pronged attack. It's us working out the Atlantis memories, and then the other is the Velon influence with those that run the planet. Because once you get up to the 33rd level of the Masons, that's where you get into the people up there up high that are introduced into the Anunnaki story. And the Anunnaki are our gods and all of this other nonsense.
Uh-huh.
And those at the very top levels of the Masons that believe in the Lucifer, Valus, Black Sun. One of my other global members happened to point out to me that when Valus had taken over Adam Weishaupt, he did announce himself as Lucifer, but there were parts in there about how he also liked to be referred to as the name Spartacus. That's also in the data.
Oh, wow. Spartacus.
So, yeah.
Nothing less than a Spartacus. Okay.
And the Velon desperately wanted everybody on the planet to believe that they were our creators and we would embrace them whenever they showed up. And it didn't work out the way they wanted it to. And like I said, my global group has been in discussions for years about this, about what's going on and what the Velon are up to and how many are left. There shouldn't be very many left because most of them have been removed. We could very well be dealing with the global leaders on this planet, and the Velon are indeed gone. There are two of my members that have the feeling that they're no longer here. We have no way of knowing without Chris and his access to the Akashic.
Yes.
But several of my members have got some pretty strong abilities, and two of them are adamant that the Velon are gone. And I'm kind of sitting on the fence myself. You know, sometimes I feel like what's going on is all Velon directed. And then there's another part of me that says, you know what, the way this thing is going about and how it's such a big fat mess, maybe the Velon are gone and it's just the world leaders that are doing this, but they're still trying to carry out what the Velon wanted to do using Velon technology. I'm not exactly sure. I'm still sitting on the fence with this one. But technology, we've got technology from the Greys. We've got technology from the Velon.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. We may possibly have technology from the Pleiadians or from the Syrians. I'm not really sure. I'm not sure if they've ever shared, but I know that all of them have been in contact with our government. So there is technology that has been shared with the government. There's no doubt about that. So that being said, say for my two global members that, yes, okay, the Velon are gone. We still have people running this planet that are using Velon technology.
Yes.
And they want to bring about the Georgia Guidestones, and they want, the population to be reduced to the 500 million so that they themselves can have the planet for themselves. And they have convinced people that transhumanism is the way to go. And ultimately, that would be the destruction of the human body, because I don't think there is a non-human soul or any other soul that, like there are some semi-physical that are in human form. I don't think that they want to be encased in some kind of robotic body. I don't think,
some kind of android like Data in Star Trek. Yeah.
That is totally not what we are trying to accomplish, because we as human beings, even though right now most of us are subhuman, there have been some that have already reintegrated. I'd have to dig in the books, but there are several million that have already reintegrated. There is a group in America and there is a group in Europe. They're waiting for us. They're waiting for the rest of us to get and join them. So the human plan has already come to a conclusion for those people. They've already reintegrated. The first ones that reintegrated were in 2003. There was less than 100 of them. We have the ability to do what we need to do, but we are being so distracted either by Velon that are still left here, or if they're gone, the powers that be that are running the planet with Velon technology. I'm not sure which.
And what is it that we need to do to integrate? And
that is
what are the obstacles or main obstacles?
$4,000 question.
Yeah. Okay.
The main obstacle is ourselves. We have the ability to deal with our crap and get rid of our crap and clean our systems and reintegrate. But so many people don't want to deal. They do not want to deal with their crap. They don't want to look at it. They don't want to
take responsibility. Yeah.
Take responsibility. There you have it. Taking responsibility for your own shit is the hardest thing in the world because nobody wants to admit that they have screwed up anything. I will tell you right now, I'm embarrassed. I can tell you when I woke up. I woke up in 2011. I'd been on an antidepressant for 21 years, and that's one of the things that probably screwed up my system. And it also gave me a heart arrhythmia. But I remember 2011 is when it started for me, because I'll tell you something that my higher self started doing for me and still does it to this day. And this is probably something that might freak out some of your listeners. But one of the things that started happening to me in 2011, which was the actual end of the human plan in October of 2011, before we got to our second deadline in December of 2012, I started getting the feeling that I needed to come off of that antidepressant. And that's exactly what I did. In fact, I weaned myself off of it very, very slowly throughout all of 2011.
Good for you.
And I just happened to completely wean myself off of it in October of 2011, which coincides with the end of the human plan. So I finally woke up, and I had 1 year and didn't do it. But my higher self has not abandoned me. It works with me every day. I talk to it every day. And one of the things that it got my attention was that it kept flashing numbers on clocks everywhere I went. And it started out with 1, 2, 3, 4, over and over and over again, everywhere I went, every day. It happened constantly. Then the 11s started to show up. I can look at the clock and I can see 3:11, 4:11, 5:11. It happens to me every single day.
Mm-hmm.
That went on for just about an entire year and like to have driven me crazy. And I started looking for information. And that's one of the things that led me to Chris Thomas's material, is because I started getting flashed 1, 2, 3, 4 on the clock all the time in 2011. And it was freaking me out. Now, I was always, I still had a little bit of spirituality to me because I had been in yoga for several years. So I knew about chakras. I knew about meditation. I knew about the higher self, but I didn't really know anything about Chris's material. But when the clock started talking to me at 1, 2, 3, 4 all the time, and then, or 3:34, or 4:34, or 7:34, or 6:34, or then 4:11, or 7:11, or 8:11, and it was flashing in my face every single day for an entire year, you will pay attention to your higher self.
Definitely. That's astonishing. Yes.
And it still happens to this day.
And numbers, they have very deep meanings with them.
Numerology is a very fascinating
Numerology
thing.
is huge.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't quite wrap my head around all of it, but I do find it fascinating.
It is fascinating. Numbers express facts, emotions. Yes, that's extremely important.
I really do. I wish I had a mind for numbers. I have a cousin that is like a human calculator, and I can't add 2 plus 2 without my phone.
Jewish tradition in Hebrew, we have, for every letter, we assign a number. Okay, and based on that, when they write your name in Hebrew, names are very important. The name is given to you by the Creator. So he decided what your name is going to be. Even in the Bible, you see it says, I knew you before you were conceived in your mother's womb. Things like that. So name is very important. If they write down your name in Hebrew and then add up, they give you a number, and from there, they can just go on and on and on and on and tell you about you. So there is a lot of, even you could say, scientific. The problem is we try to make sure that we satisfy science, scientists, scientific stuff. A lot of what science says is not science. They change it. It's theories. It's uncertain. Let's just forget about science for a minute. They give you a lot of information based on your name and writing your name in Hebrew, adding up the numbers, and then based on that, they can tell you a lot about you, your future, what you need to do, where you have come from. And and a good amount of information you can learn from that. So numbers are important, especially when numbers start flashing to your face, coming up different places. Wherever you go, you see, I don't know, number 18. 18 is an important number in Hebrew. That means hay or life, or number 23, or this number or that number. These are important. So the thing is, we get information from the environment we live in, which is from the earth. That's very important to understand. We need to pay attention to what it's trying to tell us. And in order to understand that, we need to be conscious and pay attention. We look, but we don't see. We listen, but we don't hear. We don't perceive because we're not paying attention. Majority of us. And
well,
when
we live in a world full of distraction.
Exactly. And I think a lot of it is on purpose. They create all these distractions. Hey, look at me here. Hey, look at me. To not look at the reality and facts of life and what you should do, how you can live in harmony with Earth, how you can have better life. It's not necessarily by accumulating wealth and money. Because you see a lot of people, they have that. They don't have health to enjoy it.
And they're still miserable.
Exactly, and they're miserable. Or you see people suffering from diseases that if you look at the root cause of that, they shouldn't even be sick. Wrong lifestyles and so many different things. And us talking about Atlantis, it's fantastic. Not just because we talk about the legendary continent that existed 80,000 years ago or anything like that. We try to use that and use that light for now and for future to understand how we should live today to create a better future and to stop these predators that come to our lives. They start talking about transhumanism. I'm going to make it throw a switch and you speak Chinese or Spanish. I put a chip in your head and you don't need your phone. We already have powers beyond all of this. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, this transhumanism nonsense, it completely and totally negates. I mean, if somebody follows through with something like that, it totally negates the whole reason why we're here.
Yes.
Because the bodies that we inhabit, they're perfect.
You nailed it. Yeah.
They're perfect just the way they are. And now that we have our answer and we know that the Mother Earth's frequency was too low for us, we have the ability to bring the rest of our soul into our bodies. We just have yet to do it. And I'm kind of the opinion that there's going to have to be a lot more stuff worked out in our societies in order for us to do that. I'm sitting here looking at my clock and it's flashing at me 10:34. My higher self has a great sense of humor. Anyway, the other thing that's taking place, and this is just what my higher self and my gut, which is basically the same thing, is telling me. With all of these shots, everybody's freaking out and we're all going to die from COVID, or there are people dropping dead from these vaccines. Mm-hmm. I see things differently just by virtue of knowing Chris's material. And we are talking about souls that are making choices. All of these people that are dying, they're making choices. They are leaving the planet because they want to. That's just the way it is.
Thank you. Yes.
I mean, I know it's horrific. I know it's terrible. People are freaking out.
It's callous. It sounds callous. Yeah.
Yeah, it's awful. I mean, the children are dying. The athletes are dying. People are dying in hospitals and all these other. These are souls making choices. Yes. They're moving on. They may decide to stick around the planet and maybe be reborn in the future. They may say, "Oh, I'm kind of tired. I think I'm going to go off into the universe and go check out something else for a little while."
I'm tired. Yeah, I'm
tired.
out of this game now.
We have been through the ringer, and Chris has stated that on several occasions in his interviews. We have been through the ringer. We're tired.
Yeah. Hey, Vic, this is fantastic. We have been going for, again, 80 minutes. Sounds like 10 minutes for me. 10 minutes for me. That's what I've noticed. That's what people like. When it's not, how do you say that? It's not formulated conversation. It's not you reading from something or trying to sell any ideas or products or goods, anything to them. And once you listen to a conversation like this, it helps you to start getting your wheels turning and start thinking. And that's my hope, that we all start thinking about, hey, maybe there is something beyond all this veil that is covered over my eyes and all I see is fake. And that's all it is. All we see is just a setup for a movie or something.
It's definitely a manufactured mess.
It is a manufactured, yes, thank you. It is a manufactured mess. Okay. Do you have any last words?
Well, the only thing that I can say at this point is that we have 5 more books to get through that has more Atlantis information.
Well, we'll continue that. We have every Tuesday.
And apologies to you, because sometimes you have legitimate questions and I don't have legitimate answers, because as far as I see myself in this situation, I'm just a conduit. I am not the one who gleaned this information out of the Akashic.
Let me tell you something.
What?
I am very happy that occasionally I have legitimate questions. You
have pointed questions.
It's better than not having any legitimate questions. I appreciate that. And
you have very legitimate questions. I'm embarrassed that sometimes I just don't have an answer for you.
I apologize if I make you feel like that. I don't want you to feel like that. This is a conversation. We conduct that conversation. People listen to this, and we all together find answers to that and try to grow by listening to these conversations.
Well, the fact that my global group
focus, these are not nonsense, wishful thinking. No, these are just honest conversations.
Well, my global group will be listening to these podcasts.
Okay.
And hopefully when there comes up questions that you come up with that I don't have an answer to, maybe they can chime in with something or they can give an opinion of it.
Yes.
Like I said, a lot of times some of this information, me just giving this out to you and the listening audience, there are times that some of the information, I know it's there, I know he gave it to us, but I don't really have any depth that I can follow it up with, because it's not my information. I'm just a mouthpiece at this point.
Aren't we all just a mouthpiece?
Just a mouthpiece.
Just a vocal cords for somebody else to talk to us? I believe that applies to all of us. Yeah, and I greatly appreciate that you accepted this invitation, and the fact that we will continue these conversations every Tuesday, and between now and next Tuesday, let's say another 100 emails back and forth to prepare for next Tuesday.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you so much. This was fantastic. Next week, we continue our talks about Atlantis, and also digressing and going from this place to that place, this subject to that subject. Hopefully,
we will be going
you
deeper
can make
and
make sense of all these things. Okay. Thank you very much.
Talk to you next Tuesday.
Yeah. Thank you. Have a good night. Godspeed.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.